Little did William Trent know, this day in 1763 would mark a decision recorded on paper that would echo as one of North America's darkest acts of biological warfare. Trent was a trader and clerk at Fort Pitt. In late June, during the siege that followed Pontiac's uprising, two Delaware emissaries came under a flag of truce to the fort. The British garrison was cramped, fearful, hungry, and determined to survive. The wider context was brutal and simple. The French and Indian War had ended in British victory, but victory birthed new violence. Settlers pressing into the Ohio country devastated native diplomacy, and Pontiac, an Ottawa leader, organizing a confederacy to push the British back. In spring 1763, a coordinated uprising closed many British posts, and Fort Pitt found itself beleaguered. On June 24th, and again on June 26th, the parley produced a record. William Trent wrote plainly in his trading journal, "Out of our regard to them, we gave them 2 blankets and a handkerchief out of the smallpox hospital. I hope it will have the desired effect." Those 4 lines are not fiction. They are a primary source, a ledger of intent. The act was not isolated. Higher command discussed it as policy. In mid-July, General Jeffrey Amherst, Commander-in-Chief of British forces in North America, wrote to Colonel Henry Bouquet asking if it could not be contrived to send the smallpox among the disaffected tribes of Indians. Bouquet replied that he would try to inoculate the Indians by means of blankets. Here is the conspiracy in its naked form. Senior officers considering and advocating the deliberate spread of a deadly disease to break resistance. Smallpox in the 18th century was terror incarnate. For European soldiers, it was a scourge. For native peoples, it was an apocalypse. Indigenous communities had been devastated by epidemics since first contact, lacking immunity that Europeans carried. To weaponize that vulnerability was to convert disease into a colonial instrument of extermination. What followed was a slow, intimate horror. Blankets and linens, taken from a smallpox hospital and handed over in good faith, traveled with emissaries back into villages. Within weeks and months, communities that had been vibrant were felled. Coughs became plagues of pustules. Caretakers succumbed. Entire kin networks were decimated. The epidemic spread along trade routes and gatherings, compounding the violence of displacement and siege. Contemporaries on both sides noticed. British officers later boasted or rationalized. Many native witnesses remembered betrayal and the sudden, inexplicable collapse of neighbors. The punitive expeditions that followed, Bouquet's campaign into the Ohio country in 1764, suppressed the uprising but could not undo the deaths or the trust torn apart by calculated contagion. Historians still debate the scale to which those 2 blankets and the Amherst-Bouquet correspondence directly caused the broader epidemics. Disease moves through many vectors. Cold, malnutrition, and prior exposure influence outcome. But the moral clarity of the act does not rest on epidemiological proof alone. Here was a deliberate attempt by military officers to employ disease as a weapon, a conspiracy of command to turn a hospital's linens into instruments of war. The horror is both immediate and lasting. It sits in ruined villages and in names that entered the record only as victims. It sits in the ledger of William Trent, who signed lines that would be quoted for centuries. It sits in the letters of Amherst and Bouquet, which reveal the calculus of cruelty. If a people could be broken without direct slaughter, why not try? This is a true-life horror rooted in 1763's siege and its aftermath. A documentary of decisions that blurred the line between warfare and genocide. The blankets at Fort Pitt are not merely an anecdote. They are proof that, in the cold arithmetic of empire, disease could be chosen and handed over, and that choice left scars across generations that followed.